Vandy football is crushing it in the month of June. Let's go.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. On today's episode, it's all about Vandy's recent recruiting success. Vandy has gotten 5 commits since last week and is one of the hottest teams in the country. Who will make the biggest impact? Who will be a sleeper pick, basically, who's going to contribute before they're expected to. But Adam Gorney wrote an article about some teams that are crushing it in the month of June. Vandy is definitely on that list. Here's this list right now as it stands. This is a new segment that I want to introduce. It's going to be kind of like a top 5 type scenario where I just, there's 5 topics that I discuss, and here's one of them. Okay, so 5 programs that are racking up commitments in the month of June. Rutgers, they're in order from left to right. Rutgers, Minnesota, Georgia Tech, Vandy, and Wisconsin. So this list is pretty solid. I mean, some of these teams you're surprised to see on this list. Wisconsin, I'm surprised to see them a little bit lower. Georgia Tech, they don't usually pick up their action this early. Minnesota is starting to kind of rise in the ranks of the Big Ten under PJ Fleck. And then Rutgers and Vandy are probably the 2 most surprising names on this list because those teams usually never get recruits. So, Rutgers, they're 3rd in the conference team rankings. They have 20 commitments right now, and the most in the Big Ten. They've gotten a bunch of guys, notables: Jordan Houston and Kai Wynn, Chase Linton, and Michael Clayton. Some of those guys. Minnesota, they are rowing the boat like the boys in the boat from the 1936 Olympics, the Washington Crew that won gold. They are rowing that fast. They are 6th in the Big Ten in the team rankings. They have a bunch of guys on their list, and they're rocking and rolling there as well. Georgia Tech is a team that I'm kind of surprised to see. They usually make a late push, but their recruiting has picked up a lot since Brent Key has taken over. Prior to June, they only had 3 commitments. Now they have a dozen. And they are productive in recruiting. They've got most notably 4-star Dalen Pearson and Samuel Turner as well. So those are 2 of the notable ones that they've gotten. And then Wisconsin doing their thing as normal. They've gotten a bunch of recruits as well lately, and they seem to kind of hit a streak here in the month of June. What also stands out on this list, and Adam Gorney rounds it out to a top 10, there's only one SEC team on this list so far. And you guessed it, it is Vanderbilt. All right. And so I think this is a shot in the arm for Vanderbilt. This is something that they needed. The momentum of everything that we talked about last week, or everything that we've been talking about really since January with the overhaul, all the way up until yesterday's episode where Matthew Parker kind of reinforced, I'll show you that quote again, where he kind of reinforced what I've been saying about Vanderbilt's overhaul. They're developing a winning culture. They're building a winning culture. They've overhauled the entire football operation. They've done a ton of things in recruiting. They've done a ton of things in football operations to really make a massive difference in the 2-10 record they had back in November where you were thinking, okay, Vanderbilt will probably never be good under Clark Lee. It's the bottom of the barrel. They might as well get rid of them if they don't get rid of them. And when they didn't get rid of them, I think a lot of Vandy fans and a lot of really just SEC fans were shocked. I think Vandy fans were just kind of like, I guess, that's typical for us. We're just okay with just being a good school and losing at all of our sports and, being terrible. And, unfortunately that set the tone for a pretty bad 23-24 school year as far as athletics goes, but things are starting to take a turn for the better in all of the sports. Clark Lee, I don't know, flipped a switch and started making some changes and all the changes that we noted. And one of those changes was improving and overhauling the recruiting staff. And it shows right here because they're up to 10 commitments now. And that's a number that I don't think they, at this time last year and the year before, I don't think they were even above 5 at this point. I mean, they struggled to get commitments. They struggled to get guys on board, things like that. So it was brutal. And so I think just the overall, outreach of the scouting, I think identifying guys earlier, I think having a bigger staff that gives them more attention, I think getting involved in NIL, all of those factors have helped tremendously as Vanderbilt continues to rack up recruits. They've got a couple more that have taken official visits that are on the hook that I think will end up committing. I think there's some guys coming in the next couple of weeks that I think are on the hook, and that will show up. Like Michael, I'm not even going to try to say his name. It's a tough one to say, but Michael Igbogini. Pretty sure I jacked that one up. I think everybody be in the comments trying to give me a pronunciation guide on that one. I would definitely appreciate that. It's the only visit he's got set up. So I think Vanderbilt's in the driver's seat there. He's from Trussville, Alabama. And I think also what I've noticed that stood out is that the fact that Vanderbilt has gotten commits from kind of all over. I mean, they've gotten guys from Tallahassee, Jackson, Mississippi. They've got a guy from Carson Lawrence, the 4-star kid is from he just picked up an Ole Miss offer and just went on a visit to Ole Miss. So that'll be a tough one to try to figure out. But he's from Chattanooga. They've gotten they've gotten other guys from Missouri, Illinois. The Jack Elliott, the quarterbacks from Chicago, it's just kind of a broader reach is the point. And maybe, I think maybe down the stretch they've kind of outreached, and I think and it feels like they're working their way back in because I think they really need to kind of shut down Nashville. I think schools like Vanderbilt, schools that are in these big metropolitan areas, I think they need to adopt the recruiting philosophy that Howard Schnellenberger did with Miami. They roped off an area and called that their recruiting state, the state of Miami. Maybe they need to do the state of Nashville, the state of Vanderbilt, and start roping guys in, and then just broaden that reach as you go, because there's some pretty good talent in Nashville, and I think if they can rope that off and keep Tennessee out, keep Alabama out, keep Ole Miss out, keep Kentucky out, keep Memphis out, keep Mississippi State out, so on and so forth. I think if they can dominate the state of Nashville and then start plucking guys from other places, I think they will be they're starting to develop some pipelines down in Alabama. They're starting to get some guys, maybe there's a reach into Chicago a little bit too. So that's going to be fun. But I mean, there's a lot of guys in this class that I think so far that are going to be big time contributors. And, I think Matthew Parker is somebody like, I don't think I've seen Vanderbilt get a massive offensive lineman like that. I mean, my friend, Matthew Perkins, who hosts Believe in Badgers, he was impressed. And if a Wisconsin fan is impressed with an offensive line commit that your school, whatever school that is, gets, that's a pretty big endorsement, because Wisconsin is offensive line U, and he was impressed with what Matthew Parker brought to the table, broke him down yesterday. He's going to be an absolute animal in the run game. Josiah Broxton coming out of Tallahassee. That's a big get because honestly, and I don't want to spoil it, but he's a sleeper to me. And he got his third star as an inside linebacker. So I think that's going to be something to go on. But it's been a really productive month for Vandy. As far as like starting, they kind of everyone who's visited their official visit list hasn't been as large as some of these other schools, but they've racked up. They've kind of doubled their commit list in just a week's time. So that's pretty impressive. And there's some buzz hanging around. The Undertaker stopped by Clark Lee's office in recent days. And there's just some sort of buzz happening around the program. And, there's something going on. You have other players recruiting for Vandy, like Austin Howard has been tremendous in recruiting for Vandy and being an ambassador for Vanderbilt recruiting. So that's been very nice to see. And it's great, man. And this is hopefully the start of something much bigger in the grand scheme of the program, and something that is also going to help solidify that winning culture that Vanderbilt and Clark Lee, or that Clark Lee and Vanderbilt is trying to build from the university level, like president, chancellor level, on down through the athletic department. Mark Byington, Tim Corbin, Clark Lee, Shea Ralph, and the other coaches of the other sports are going to build winning cultures. And 24-25 season athletic seasons are going to be should be and are going to be much improved, I think, with some of the things that have already happened. So there's some impact guys in this class already, and we're going to talk about that next. All right, this episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. And if you want NBA tickets, you better act fast because this series is going by fast. They're going to have some killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. So if you're going to go, like I said, you better go quick, or you better turn your attention to Major League Baseball or the NHL. But anyway, the features I love, man. This, there's a ton to choose from. There's a ton of things. There's a customize your spot and things like that. That last minute tickets, flash deals, views from your seat. Those are all features that I love. Last minute deals are, you save 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and etc. because they want to get you in the building. So they're going to, Gametime is going to entice people to get in the building where they have some deals on tickets. Flash deals, there's even more exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of a game or event. So like a featured section, things like that. Zone deals save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose the seats. All-in pricing. So if you toggle this feature on, it shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. This is my favorite because I think this is cool. You get to see, wherever you are, you get to see that seat and that view, so that like you avoid getting one of those obstructed view seats, like if you're going to Yankee Stadium and you're not sitting behind a post. You'll get that view. So they have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in all of the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets, or any tickets for that matter, with Gametime. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On College. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN? Are you having to turn down the volume with all that screaming so you don't distract everybody around you? Well, here's what you need to do. You need to make the switch now to Locked On Sports Today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. So Vandy is absolutely crushing it in the month of June. I mean, here, according to a list put together by Adam Gorney of Rivals.com, here's a list of who Vandy's partying with in the category of who are some of the teams that are absolutely crushing it in June and racking up commitments and just heating up in recruiting. These are some of the teams. Wisconsin's usually one of the teams that are always kind of up around the upper echelon of recruiting. So I love it, man. And this is something that, as part of the overhaul, this is something that, if you went down your checklist of things like after a 2-10 season, things you need to change. Recruiting is definitely up there. Offensive, defensive philosophy, which in Vandy's case, just get one, just acquire one. And then, of course, on down the list, strength and conditioning, they're all kind of important. They're all kind of working in together. And I think NIL plays a huge part of that as well. So I'm digging it. I think this is a great thing for Vanderbilt. So who's going to be the most impactful recruits? Now, I think early on, I think your definition of impactful, it just depends on how you define that in your mind. Okay. So for the sake of this show, I'm going to say impactful as who's going to contribute early. Okay. Who's going to be the ones that are out there and they're contributing right now. Okay. Because I know it's easy to say the best recruit in this class is the best commit, I should say, not necessarily recruit because they're recruiting more than is committed. But the best one in this class is probably Jack Elliott, the quarterback, or Carson Lawrence, the safety out of McCauley. But I think the most impactful is the one who's going to contribute the most, the soonest. And honestly, I think Matthew Parker has a chance offensively to be the first one to contribute. I think he's going to have a massive impact because just his sheer size and athleticism, at being that size, 6'8", 300 pounds, because usually you get high school kids that are 6'8", 300 pounds. Sometimes they're not necessarily their athleticism has not caught up with their body and they need a year in strength and conditioning. I don't know if you've watched this kid's film, but holy cow. It's impressive. Lots of pancakes. I think Gabe Fields will be very impactful early on at running back. I think because it's such a thin position right now. They got enough, but I don't think it's as deep as they probably want it to be in that position group. I think you get a couple injuries and you're probably looking at some trouble and looking at playing a few walk-ons in that position, and you're going to be in a world of hurt. So I think Gabe Fields adds another layer to that when he gets on campus. I think he has the talent to be able to get in the rotation and get in the rotation early, which is why I think he'll be very, very impactful. And then I think Vanderbilt has enough class separation to where Cameron Dixon can come in and not necessarily be relied or have to be heavily relied on, which in a way you don't want to rely on a ton of freshmen, but I think Cameron Dixon is somebody who will play. But I think he's somebody that is going to come in, develop, take a year in strength and conditioning. I don't think he'll redshirt because I don't think the position group is that deep to be able to redshirt guys unless they sign some more receivers or move some guys around or get some guys out of the portal, which is completely possible. But I think he'll be able to take a year for the most part in strength and conditioning. And I still think it's a great signing because he's explosive, but I just think he might need a little bit of development and they might not need him as much. If they need him, there's some injuries there. He's certainly able to step in and play if needed, but I just don't think they'll need him that much. Defensively, the most impactful, honestly, probably going to be, I would say probably Austin Howard would probably be your most impactful because at the outside linebacker position, I think you are pretty thin there, and there's some guys that aren't necessarily household names. So when you look at the way he plays, as explosive as he is, the leadership qualities that he has obviously shown with with recruiting other guys, and basically on his official visit, just getting the entire crew on the visit to commit. I think that shows you the leadership qualities that he has. And if he takes that into the season, I think he'll be really, really good. So this is going to be an interesting one to watch. I think he'll be the most impactful defensively. And then in the secondary, I think with the way, I think CJ Taylor's gone after this year. DeRicky Wright is probably in his final year because he was a grad transfer, so he's probably got 1, maybe 2 more years left. So I think the safety position, if Carson Lawrence is able to hang on and makes it to Vanderbilt and signs with Vanderbilt in December, which I assume he's going to be a December signee, I think him and Dante Carter will end up in the safety rotation. So I think those two guys will end up being very, very, very impactful on that position and just kind of take over, kind of step in with what DeRicky Wright and CJ Taylor are able to bring to the table. Dante Carter will have already been on campus. He can lead a little bit, but this is going to be a fun group nonetheless. I mean, I think this is a great crop of recruits. Are there any sleepers? Yes, there's some sleepers. There's some guys that you may not expect to compete right away, but they very well could contribute more so in fall. We'll talk about the sleepers next. Welcome back. Third and final segment. We're wrapping up the show here on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your first listen. Make sure you watch Locked On SEC. Make them your second listen each and every day. And if you want to continue to be the most knowledgeable fan base in the SEC, make sure you check out our list of shows from around the conference, like Locked On Auburn, Locked On Ole Miss, Locked On LSU, so on and so forth. Locked On Missouri, they're on our schedule. They're our first conference game, actually. So be sure to check them out to see what the Missouri Tigers bring to the table. So when you're chirping at work to your friends, whatever, you know what the heck you're talking about. And they don't. So make sure you do that. All right, make sure you go check those out after you finish this episode. All right. So who's the sleepers of this class? This is a really good class especially for Vandy's sake. I think Vandy has to take some baby steps in recruiting. I don't think, we have to judge Vandy not by the standards that we judge Georgia and Alabama by, because those guys just rake in 5 stars, right? And they do well in the portal too. I mean, there's just a machine at that level. With what Vanderbilt has going for them, they've never been great at recruiting to begin with. And then you pair that with a couple of abysmal seasons and kind of a culture of not really caring about athletics. Who wants to go play there? I mean, the degree is great. Don't get me wrong, but who wants to go play there, right? That's been the reputation of Vanderbilt athletics. That's why, if you want to know why they haven't been able to recruit, that's why, right? Because the thought is, well, if the school don't give a dang about us, why would I want to go there? The atmosphere is terrible. They're not doing anything. The stadium hasn't been touched since 1980. They're not going to participate in NIL. That they just coaching. Even the coaches seem uninterested, and on down the list, right? Well, something's changed. Something sparked. That's no longer the case. Vandy's contributing in NIL. They got a brand new stadium project, which is coming along quite nicely, I must add. And there's a lot of positive things. I mean, you've got celebrities coming by to see Coach Lee, which I didn't know if Coach Lee was human last year. I thought maybe he was a cyborg at some point. They were trying to program him with human emotions, and he just kind of looked like that on the sideline. But the Undertaker's coming to see him now. That's pretty cool. So when you look at, they got a whole host of 3 stars, and you got Cameron Dixon, who hasn't been ranked yet. But I think if you were to rank him, he's going to get 3 stars because he's good, he's electric, he's explosive. He's just from Corpus Christi in an area, and he hasn't really done any camps or anything, or I don't think he's gotten on the Rivals ranking radar just yet. But I think he'll be a 3-star once they kind of finally get around to him. He's committed. They'll probably look at him now. But who's going to be a sleeper pick to contribute before they're expected to? I think the first one that comes to mind, and when I say sleeper, I'm not talking like this guy is like not very good and he's going to be thrust in the starting lineup because whatever, because Vandy sucks and he's just better than the dregs of that's not my definition of sleeper at all. My definition of sleeper is you're walking into a group that's may or may not need you. And coming in, it's like, okay, well, they're starting to develop a little depth there, but like this guy might be good enough to kind of overcome some of that and kind of leap over some of these upperclassmen. I think Caden Daniels is just that. He's a guy that doesn't, when you watch his film, he's always in the right place. Obviously, Crisp County is well coached down in South Georgia, down in Cordele. They're extremely well coached. You can tell by his technique. You can tell by his anticipation and his recognition and his ability to play with leverage and positioning and things like that. He just puts himself in a good position everywhere he turns. And then, so you've got that going for you. But like he's such a technician that he's probably fast. Okay. I don't want to get the idea that you think I think Caden Daniels is slow. He's not. He's just in such good position and has such good leverage and is so physical and uses his hands well and all that stuff. It's so well coached that it's hard to tell just how athletic he is, because there's some people that are more raw, that are coming from systems that aren't quite as developed, and they're just doing it on sheer athleticism. There's you can tell there's not much technique. There's just things they've picked up on by watching TV and watching how other guys do it. And you see that. And you're starting to think okay, how good could this guy really be if he got some coaching? He's super raw, but holy cow, the guy runs a 4.3 and jumps 37 inches in the air. That's super, super talent. And so when you look at those factors, it is, he doesn't seem like he's athletic because he's right there. He's already there. But then you watch him in man coverage and you can tell he can run a little bit. He's probably not as fast as the fastest guy, but he's definitely not slow by any stretch. But when you see him play and you watch his film, you're thinking, okay, this guy's going to come in, do some speed training and things like that. But he's just so well coached. He's such a technician. He may find his way on the field above some of these other upperclassmen at the cornerback position, because they're still trying to revamp that position. There's a lot of guys in the boat, but they just need one more guy to come in, right? One or two more guys. They'll probably get more guys in the portal. I think Vandy has shown that they're going to be active in the portal. I'm anticipating they're not going to lose as much next year to the portal, because if they're building this winning culture, there might be some more guys that stick around versus last year. It was a dumpster fire and everybody was just bailing, jumping ship before it exploded and sank on them. So I think Caden Daniels is your first sleeper of this group, not because I think he's bad, and overrated or whatever, but because I think the way the cornerback position has been kind of recruited, I think there's some guys that are going to be in front of him. He's going to come into a seemingly loaded depth chart, but I think he's somebody that's good enough, football savvy enough to be able to rise up that depth chart pretty good. I think he's going to be somebody that can find a niche as a nickel corner, where you get you want to get a safety type, that star position that everybody likes, because that has different types of personnel in that spot, depending on, how you match personnel with the other team. If the other team comes out in 10 personnel, you're probably going to match personnel with another corner. So you're probably going to go 3 corners in the game, 4 corners in the game, maybe. Some more athletic guys in the slots to guard those guys. If they go 11 personnel and use 10 personnel type sets, you may go with a bigger body there to blanket your tight end, and you still may go three corners. If you have something like a 12 personnel set, like he may not be on the field, like he may not be a nickel personnel. So there's various ways to get him on the field, and I think that his ability to cover anywhere, his ability to fill in the run game and be physical and get hands on somebody and be able to press, I think that's going to help him get on the field early because, outside of the special teams, outside of contributing there altogether, I think just getting in on defense, using your hands, being able to run with guys is going to benefit you a great deal. I think he's probably the biggest chance at a sleeper. I don't know that there's any other sleepers in this group. I think it's a talented group that will compete, probably get a chance to develop. But I think Josiah Broxton is somebody also that could benefit from a year in strength and conditioning, but he's possibly a sleeper too at the inside linebacker position. But as you can see, I'm plumb out of time. This was a fun episode. Vandy is crushing it in the month of June. Very excited about that. Want to thank you for listening. Make sure you follow us on social media at Locked On Vandy on all social media platforms. At Coach Burton 36 is my personal account here. Make sure you like and subscribe. Leave a comment on Apple Podcasts. I enjoy reading those. Those are fun. So make sure you read those. And if you can make me laugh, bonus points. I don't know what those bonus points are being used on, but you get bonus points nonetheless. So with that being said, that's all I got for you today. Hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. And we'll see you back here on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Peace. Anchor down.